What gives me the right to tell you how your property should be run? Stay with me and I'll tell you. Welcome to another edition of Hospitality Property School. I am your instructor, Gerry MacPherson. Since the founding of Keystone Hospitality Development Consulting in 2012, I've been asked many times about my experience and expertise. I decided that for today's episode, I'm going to share my story. I grew up as a forces kid, a military kid in Canada, and we moved. We moved a lot. I actually went to 12 different schools my first 12 years of school, living in many different provinces in that vast country. In our final move as a family, we moved to the beautiful city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the east coast of Canada, where I continued my education. After finishing school, I worked with the city of Halifax for a couple of years, but I always had a bit of a travel bug. So whenever the opportunity arose, I would travel. In the early 90s, a friend of mine contacted me. He had just bought a hotel as an investment, and he wanted to know if I wanted to come help run it. Now, I had no expertise, no knowledge, nothing when it came to operating a hotel, and he had less. But I thought, how hard can this be? You check in people, make sure the beds are made, and say goodbye to them when they're leaving. Well, as it turned out, I was totally wrong. Operating a hotel when you do not know what you're doing can be overwhelming. We had no idea how to set up a proper booking system. The organizational structure was non-existent. And marketing, we were basically depending on word of mouth. For the 2 years I was there, I watched as the hotel fell deeper and deeper into disrepair, saw a high turnover in staff, and return business becoming non-existent. I decided to cut my losses and I left for another position. 2 months later, the owner sold the property, taking a huge loss. The experience stuck with me. When I left that position, I went on to become an independent tour guide, offering tours in and around the city. This was something I really enjoyed. After a year, I expanded and I started offering tours not only in the city of Halifax, but throughout the province, across Canada, and then internationally. I ran bus tours, train tours, and cruise ship tours. After a couple of years, I began designing and offering my own tours, and designing tours for larger tour operators. This included site inspections and reviews of properties worldwide. While doing my tours and designing tours for other companies, I spent thousands of nights in hotels, resorts, inns, and bed and breakfasts worldwide. Many of the properties I had the pleasure of visiting had it all. Spotless facilities, staff so organized that you thought they were all mind readers, and over and above customer service. I also stayed in properties that lacked. For years, these properties I just crossed off my list, knowing that a good word from me could mean a contract for them worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. There were many times that I felt with a little effort or the right direction, these properties could be more successful. But that was not up to me. 11 years ago, I was lucky enough to meet a lovely lady from Germany, and 2 years later we were married. I've since been spending more time on both sides of the Atlantic. We both like to travel, so we started spending more time in properties as guests, and I began to look at them differently. I realized that many independent properties did not have a team or a branded organizational structure to fall back on. Instead, many property owners were learning as they went along. Sure, there are hospitality property training schools out there, but very few that I've met had the time or were willing to spend the money to attend. I began to look more closely at properties that were doing it all right, studying their procedures and asking a ton of questions. It did not take long for me to see that successful properties had a lot in common. They had an organizational structure in place that ran like a well-oiled machine. And what I mean by this, they had an operations manual that covered every how, why, and what for all the procedures, any problems, and responsibilities. For example, how to clean a room consistently the same way every time, how to handle customer complaints, how to train employees. They all had employee development as a priority. In most cases, the employees were considered the number one priority for successful properties. Now, you might be questioning this observation, thinking that your guests have to be your number one priority. But think about it. If your employees are not fulfilled or feel they are being taken advantage of, are they going to consistently give 100% to your guests? They are up to date in their marketing, and they saw their property through the eyes of their guests. Obviously, there is a difference in hospitality property styles based on which country you might be visiting, but I realized the basics are all the same. That is when I spoke to some old colleagues and floated the idea of becoming a source for smaller independent properties. That is when Keystone Hospitality Development Consulting was born. We decided on our mission statement. We want to contribute with patience and caring to a strategic vision for every hotel, resort, inn, and bed and breakfast wishing to create a happy and fulfilling experience for their clientele and employees. Now, if you've been following us for a while, you might have noticed I use the term hospitality property quite often when referring to hotel, resorts, inns, or bed and breakfast. And that is because, as I mentioned before, they all need the same basics. First, we created a blog and began posting weekly. Then we launched the Hospitality Property School podcast. Next came the training tutorials, starting at the basics, how to open a bed and breakfast, how to open an independent hotel. And then we offered a full training program that was available as a complete package or as one of 4 series. Designing your own hospitality property organizational structure, employee development for your hospitality property, how to successfully market your hospitality property, and how do your customers see your hospitality property. We also realized that video was becoming very important in marketing, and that if properties are not showing off their property with video, they are already 3 steps behind their competition. So we offer review video creation and hospitality property promotional video creation. We have a bookstore with 4 books available: how to open an independent hotel, how to open a bed and breakfast, how to improve your independent hotel's success, and how to improve your bed and breakfast success. We saw that if a property was not on social media, again, they are probably falling way behind their competition. So we help properties set up their Facebook, Twitter, YouTube channels, Pinterest or LinkedIn account, either individually or together as a package. And we are also establishing a hospitality property school group membership site. It's been a busy 7 years, and I know we're just scratching the surface. What is the future going to bring? Well, things are constantly changing in the hospitality property industry, and we are going to stay on top of these changes for you. We are your support, and we want you to benefit to the fullest. I hope this story made sense, and our motivation is clear, and I want you to feel free to reach out with your questions, blog post, and podcast ideas. We'd also like to hear all about your property. Please tell us by leaving a comment below. As a thank you for checking out this episode, we have extended a special offer just for you. You can find more about it by visiting the Upgrade Your Success special link below. We will see you next time, right here in Hospitality Property School.